I will defeat the Powerpuff Girls, or my name isn't Mojo Projo.
Roxanne versus Korvold, Queen Marchesa, and Rakdos. Well, it's a rare game in which there's no blue players at least, and we, of course, only have a one-lander, so yeah, have to mulligan that. And again, of course, into a hand with nothing but mana in it, so we are going down a card on this one. Alright, that's looking pretty decent actually. Yeah, I don't really like getting rid of Reaver Cleaver, but I think that will have to be the one that goes here. Alright, well, there's a Sol Ring on turn 1, can't really complain at that, so yeah, we'll go for a Surveil Land with the 3 visits next turn, meaning we have to go for the Sol Ring now. Maybe could go for Tireless Provisioner next turn, and then start ramping into that. Sol Ring from the Rakdos player as well, which takes him into Rakdos Signet. Authority of the Consuls is going to switch off haste for us, so Captain Lannery Storm not quite as good anymore. And another enchantment is Dreadhorde Invasion, some sack fodder for the Korvold deck. So, alright, Misty Rainforest is good. Into a Tireless Provisioner as well, so let's go Tireless Provisioner. Comes into play tapped and gains our opponent a life, but that doesn't really matter at the moment. Misty Rainforest makes a treasure token. And then let's crack this for a Surveil Land and we'll get a couple of treasures into play this turn so that we can go for a tapped 3 visits. Or do we go for the Surveil Land here? Forget what jewels we've got available to us. This will come into play untapped on its own, so yeah, we can go for an untapped land here and then we only crack 1 treasure. That would make sense, so make a Tiger, which makes a treasure. Do we just go Lannery Storm so we can start swinging? Yeah, I suppose that makes more sense while the haste isn't as good. Only 3 cards in hand at the moment, of course, but hopefully the Lannery Storm will get buffed up enough. Otherwise we can go Roxanne and draw at least 4 off this. Oh, actually, that's a human, isn't it? So, yeah, need to be wary of that with Return of the Wild Speaker. Doesn't often come up, but sometimes I'll fall for that trap. It's non-humans that it looks at. So buffering the pirate won't do anything. Profane Tutor being suspended for the Rakdos deck. And it's a Talisman of Hierarchy for Queen Marchesa, going substantially slower than us, unfortunately, thanks to our fast mana. And the first token comes into play for Korvold. Not playing any spells though, so just holding up the Jund Panorama by the looks of it. Missed a land drop. Okay, Swords to Plowshares. Goes on to our token enabler, unfortunately, but we got a Captain Lannery Storm out of the deal at least. So I suppose we know who we're swinging in at now. Alright, a Bootlegger's Stash, so could even go for that this turn, but I think it's best to get down our commander before we lose the Sol Ring. So let's just go for our commander right now. Comes into play tapped again, and we'll shock the Queen Marchesa player just to try and keep their life total down a bit. We can always swing in with Roxanne next turn and shock this before it gets too big. And we'll swing straight down the middle, again keeping their life total down, so make another treasure. And that will tap for 2 mana, probably go for the 3 visits this turn. If we keep hold of the Sol Ring, then next turn we'll have 6 mana on these, meaning we can go Bootlegger's Stash, tap, maybe, yeah, a couple of lands for treasure to double up the mana there. And we'll have a couple of lands left up thanks to this 3 visits we're about to go for, so crack that for 2 mana, because Roxanne does look at treasure as well. And now we can go for that Commercial District and have a look at the top card, fix our draw for next turn. That is a Fomori Vault. For 3 mana and tap we can discard a card, look at the top X, where X is the number of artifacts we control, 1 into our hand, the rest on the bottom. I think even with the surplus mana this early on it's a little bit too slow. I'd rather just... yeah, let's put it in the bin. I mean, if we're going to make multiple treasure next turn, a treasure and a meteorite, then maybe that would have been worth keeping. 1 more time counter on the Profane Tutor, so that'll go off next turn. Maestro's Theatre comes into play, so is sacrificed and a life is gained straight away. Fixing that red mana on the land finally. Stonecoil Serpent does have protection from multicoloured. I don't think that's going to be relevant with our meteorites anyway, although it's these that target, so multicoloured protection doesn't matter there anyway. Enters as a 5/5, has reach and trample as well, which is noteworthy. Alright, and there we see Linvala. Activated abilities of creatures can't be activated, so doesn't switch anything off on the battlefield so far, but this is definitely worth getting rid of. And the land is cracked over here before the beginning of the turn. Korvold missing a land again, so it's only a matter of time before that player scoops it up. And there is another jewel for us. So that means a decent number of treasure with the bootlegger's stash, and we might have to crack this for just 4, unfortunately. Alright, so let's go Roxanne into the left. And we'll take Lannery Storm in at the right, and we can shock the zombie out of the way. So Roxanne coming in will bring in a meteorite, Captain Lannery Storm, a treasure again. And the meteorite entering, like I said, shock the zombie out of the way so that it can't take down our pirate. So then we'll shock down a stomping ground, take ourselves back to the starting life total. And yeah, what we could have done, we would have had this in hand this turn instead. So we could have paid 3 into that, tapped it and looked at the top 4 cards in this case, which wouldn't have been the worst in hindsight, but one of them would have been stomping ground, maybe one of the top 3 after that would have been decent. Anyway, it's a bootlegger's stash. One of the only decks in which I think the bootlegger's stash actually works. So we're just looking to draw 4 cards with the Return of the Wild Speaker now. I think we'll convert these lands into treasure tokens, because obviously the treasure's tapped for 2, so we end up gaining mana then. Profane Shooter. Could hurt us trying to rely on this because someone could go for spot removal onto the Roxanne in response, but maybe they'll forget about the non-human clause as well. If this is buffed up enough, they might point removal at that instead, thinking that it will draw us fewer cards. And Profane Shooter going to be cast from exile this turn. Alright, the 5/5 goes in at the Korvold player, surprisingly. So the Rakdos Lord of Riots coming into play. That's the only way in which he can cast that. Needs to be able to deal damage to someone. Might be able to cheat something into play here as well. Has a lack of coloured mana. Alright, just a Lightning Greaves, 4 cards in hand. And protecting his Rakdos, so we might start to see Eldrazi next turn if we're not careful. There has just been a tutor after all. Another talisman for the Mardu player. And holding back the 3/4 as a blocker, as you would expect. So the way I built Queen Marchesa, it was pretty much removal tribal, so they could get rid of our commander. We'll wait until the end of this player's turn and we'll see as though it looks as though they're going to be pointing anything at Roxanne. May well regret getting rid of the Fomori Vault. Anyway, we've still got a clear line of attack here unless the Korvold player does decide to scoop it up on turn 5. Because the creature has come into play tapped. Alright, well there's something at least, an evolutionary leap. Maybe he has a means of getting into a Sakura Tribe Elder or something like that. Our opponent here isn't holding up priority, so let's see if he does something in response to this. No, it looks like he has F6 through the turn, so hopefully doesn't have anything held up. Let's go for casting at Return of the Wild Speaker. Draw cards equal to power. So a bunch of pluses on the Captain Lannery Storm isn't of any relevance here, but does go up to 5. Alright, gets us into a second harvest. Down to Brass's Bounty. Great Train Heist, is that relevant? Don't think so. Can make an additional combat phase, which might be of some relevance. That Jeska's Will's nice. And getting into second harvest, when we can make a bunch of treasure on the lands, is good as well. So how do we play this turn? Fiery Emancipation is a very good one also. Yeah, I think we definitely want the Fiery Emancipation down. Play that by tapping only 3 permanents. Then there's 6 cards in hand over here, so let's make some treasure and we can point the mana over here. Might have to do this during the first main because I'm worried about Korvold scooping in response to us swinging in over there, which is something that we have to be wary of, unfortunately. Just trading out all of these for treasure tokens because of the second harvest here. So let's go Jeska's Will. Obviously we do control our commander, so we'll do both of these. Pointed over at the Jund deck. Crack a couple of treasures to do it. And this also buffs Captain Lannery Storm as well. Alright, now what have we got? There's a Crackle with Power, which could do something this turn. We've got Karplusan Forest as a land for the turn, so we'll get that in. Big score. Could trade out the Train Heist for that, although can we generate enough mana for a Crackle with Power? We don't just win this turn, surely. Well, we've got 7 mana available to us, so we can just spend that on a Brass's Bounty right now. So we'll just do that. That's from the Jeska's Will, of course, so that makes us 10 treasures, or we go up to 10 treasure, can't remember how many we had. Make a treasure with the land as well, and then we'll hold priority with the Great Train Heist, because we want to get an additional combat in this turn and do some other stuff as well. So we can give our stuff first strike with this, I think. Yeah, +1 and first strike. So Lannery Storm down the middle, Roxanne to the right. And is this triple damage? Yeah, triple damage, so we can get this out of the way with the Meteorite token, because it'll deal 6 damage instead of 2. So get that Serpent out of the way. And then during attacks, we'll cast this Great Heist. In fact, I think it's going to be worth it to go for Second Harvest first. That way we'll double up our treasures to 20. We'll get some meteorites as well. So we can get some blockers out of the way, or get the Linvala blocker out of the way. So now we get 3. So it's Linvala, point damage at the Queen Marchesa, and we'll point damage at Rakdos as well. Haven't worked out damage with Cracker with Power yet, because this board state's a bit too complicated for my pea-brain. We will empty our hand, Great Train Heist for 7 mana now. So we end up buffing Lannery again. We could take a player out with that and triple damage, I suppose. But the Great Train Heist is going to get us an additional combat phase, a tap treasure, and first strike on our stuff. So then we get through to the blocking phase. Looks like there's no removal. Alright, we'd knock this player down to 12. Great Train Heist brings a treasure into play tapped. Got this player down to 15 as well. So with the additional combat phase, we get this player on commander damage. And obviously there's an additional attack phase here, so beginning of combat we go for the commander going in at the right, and that'll be commander damage hopefully. This player now holding up priority, so maybe had some removal available during all that. I mean, we've got a bunch of mana available to us now, but if they want to get rid of Roxanne, it will deplete the number of treasure we can put into the Crackle with Power. Anyway, Queen Marchesa has decided to start roping on us, as they say on Magic Arena. So let's work out here. We get rid of this player with Roxanne, we assume. We get rid of this player with the Captain Lannery Storm, because it's 8 mana and it's triple damage. So then we only have to get rid of Rakdos, and it's however much into X. So 1 treasure pays for red. And then we'll have 18 left over, so 18 divided by 3. Anyway, pass priority now, so we'll do the attacks first and see if we land anything. Hopefully be able to get rid of everyone with a Crackle with Power anyway. Roxanne makes a Meteorite for triple damage again. And that player deciding to scoop. Point the Meteorite at Rakdos. And that's 6 damage when it enters. Okay, managed to get rid of the Mardu player. And then we get our second main. Alright, we made a treasure there with Captain Lannery Storm, so I've actually got 19 mana. So 19 divided by 3 is 6. So point that at our one opponent. And we put 6 mana into X basically. Or 6 treasure we can put into X. Which means we can actually put 12 into X here, doesn't it? Alright, so with 1 treasure left we put 12 into X. And it's triple damage. So Crackle with Power is on the stack there somewhere. Yeah, Captain Lannery Storm going to resolve first. We can deal 5 times X damage on up to X targets, so we could have done this on each of our opponents this turn if we'd needed to. And then that damage will be tripled as well, so 5 times 12 is 60, and then times that by 3 is 120. I think that's how it works. But anyway, get our opponent down to minus 155. We had an empty hand, and that was a turn 1 Soul Ring, but we did have to mulligan down to 6 at least. I think the only interaction we saw, in all fairness, was the hasty Swords to Plowshares. Argument to be made that it's a good play to go on the Tireless Provisioner, but we only had a few cards in hand, and it's a bit of a gamble to leave it in play. Maybe we had a massive spell that we could have cast, and Tireless Provisioner would have got us there. But it turns out holding on to it for the Roxanne and removing our double mana might have been the play. But obviously they didn't know what was in our hand. Yeah, turned out to be a pretty commanding one, that. So hopefully you all enjoyed it. Roxanne seems to be a pretty underrated one that I've had a lot of fun with so far. Doubt we'll play it again because we've got Modern Horizons in the next few weeks, but if you are desperate to see it, then flood the comments section with requests for Roxanne. Big thank you to the patrons as ever as well for their financial support. I'm Tribalkai. Thank you for watching.